The rise and fall of the Achaemenid Empire, also known as the First Persian Empire, the origin story of the Persians is one of those that's easy to get wrong. Most people will tell you they came from the province of Parsa, or Fars, in modern-day Iran, and that they were originally just a small tribe known as the Persians. While this is technically true, it ignores the fact that for centuries before Cyrus the Great came to power, the Persians were actually ruled over by other Iranian-speaking peoples such as the Medians and the Assyrians. Even Cyrus's own grandfather was an Assyrian vassal. So how exactly did Cyrus take the relatively insignificant tribe of Persians and turn them into a regional powerhouse? Well, to answer that question, we have to go back a little further. Cyrus's grandfather was a man named Cambazazai, who ruled over a small kingdom nestled between Media, Lydia, and Elam. And while his realm was small, he had big dreams of empire. But to do that, he needed help. Luckily for him, he was able to form a close relationship with the Medes, most likely due to marrying the daughter of the Median king. Together, the Medes and the Persians would go on to conquer much of Western Asia Minor and even parts of Mesopotamia. But not long after, the empire would be plunged into civil war. Cambyses' son, who succeeded him as king, sided with the Babylonians against the Medes, but lost, resulting in his premature demise. This left the throne to Cyrus's uncle, Cyrus the Great. Despite the political turmoil that had been tearing his family apart, Cyrus managed to unite the Persians under his banner and marched into Mesopotamia. There, he defeated the Assyrians, won back parts of Western Asia Minor, and even pushed into Central Asia. Before long, Cyrus had become the most powerful ruler in the region, and his empire was growing. Next up, he set his sights on the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The first Persian king to try and conquer Babylon was Cyrus King, but he failed. Cyrus the Great would have none of that. After raising a massive army, he marched on Babylon and took it. He then went on to conquer the rest of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, defeating the great king Nebuchadnezzar III in the process. This victory made Cyrus the ruler of all of Mesopotamia, the Levant, and most of the Arabian Peninsula. He would go down in history as the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, also known as the First Persian Empire. The next 2 centuries of Achaemenid history would see the empire grow larger and become wealthier than any empire that came before it. Soon after Cyrus died, his son Cambyses II took the throne. Unlike his father, Cambyses had designs on conquering Egypt. He invaded and successfully subjugated the country, incorporating it into the empire. Then, soon after, he set his sights on the west, invading Thrace and even reaching the outskirts of the Greek city of Susa. However, his campaigns in Greece proved unsuccessful, and he was forced to retreat. Still, despite the setbacks, his empire remained intact. Upon his death, it was passed on to his brother, Darius the Great. Darius was a brilliant administrator who reformed and reorganized the empire, solidifying its foundations. He divided it into satrapies or provinces, each of which was ruled over by a satrap or governor, which would collect taxes and maintain order. This administrative reform allowed the empire to function without the need for a massive bureaucracy. To oversee the sprawling empire, Darius undertook extensive building projects, including the construction of the Royal Road, a series of palaces and administrative centers. His most famous building project, though, was his new capital city, Persepolis. Persepolis would become the ceremonial capital of the empire and the center of Achaemenid culture. It was here where kings would hold court and where foreign ambassadors would come to pay their respects. Darius's reign marked the height of Achaemenid power. At its greatest extent, the empire stretched from Central Asia to the Levant and from Anatolia to the Arabian Peninsula. Still, despite the size of his empire, Darius spent much of his reign suppressing revolts and putting down rebellions. One of the most serious revolts broke out in Elam, while others were sparked by discontented satraps. Though the revolts were eventually put down, they drained the treasury and exhausted the empire. When Darius died, he left his son Xerxes with an unstable and weakened empire. Xerxes inherited many of his father's problems, including the ongoing revolts and an empty treasury. In addition to that, Xerxes had a lot to prove. Many people doubted his ability to rule, and some even believed that he was uneven the true heir to the throne. They said that he was merely the son of a concubine, and that he stole the throne from his cousin, the true heir presumptive. To win over his doubters and secure his position, Xerxes embarked on a series of ambitious building projects and military campaigns. He built new palaces and temples, as well as a new fleet of warships. And when that was finished, he turned his attention to the Greeks. Xerxes' invasion of Greece has become one of the most infamous events in history, but it wasn't nearly as decisive as many people believe. In 480 BC, Xerxes led his army into Greece, where they clashed with the Greeks at the Battle of Thermopylae. It was here where the Spartans famously held off the Persians, buying time for the rest of the Greeks to prepare their defenses. Eventually, though, the Persians found a way around the Spartans and continued their advance until they reached Athens. There, they looted and burned the city before continuing on to the rest of Greece. Although the Persians did win battles along the way, they ultimately failed to achieve a decisive victory. And with winter approaching, they were forced to retreat. Realizing that he couldn't defeat the Greeks on land, Xerxes then turned to the sea. In 479 BC, the Greek navy defeated the Persian fleet at the Battle of Mycale. This victory effectively ended the Second Persian War and secured Greece's independence. The loss of Greece wasn't a huge blow to the empire. It didn't have much economic value anyway, and most of the subjects there probably didn't even care about being liberated. For the next century or so, the empire enjoyed a period of peace and prosperity. During this time, trade flourished, cities grew, and the arts and sciences thrived. However, by the mid-5th century, the empire was beginning to show signs of weakness. The once strong central government was becoming weaker and more decentralized, and the satraps were becoming more powerful and independent. In the early 400s, the empire was rocked by another series of revolts, this time led by the Medes. The revolt was eventually crushed, but not before doing significant damage to the empire. From there, things only went downhill. The Achaemenids were now in decline, and it wouldn't be long before they collapsed completely. In 336 BC, the empire was dealt a devastating blow when its king, Artaxerxes II, was assassinated by one of his generals, Bessus. Bessus then declared himself emperor and plunged the empire into yet another civil war. By the time the dust had settled, the empire was broken. Bessus had carved out his own kingdom in the east, and the once great Achaemenid Empire was now nothing more than a collection of small states. The last king of the Achaemenids tried to restore the empire's former glory, but he too was unsuccessful. In 323 BC, Alexander the Great invaded and defeated the Persians, ending the Achaemenid dynasty once and for all. Alexander's empire would go on to incorporate much of the former Persian territories, and the Achaemenid cultural sphere would influence the Hellenistic world for centuries to come. Though the Achaemenid Empire would ultimately fail, it shouldn't be forgotten. Not only was it the first Persian empire, but it was also one of the largest and most powerful empires in ancient history. Its rulers were some of the most accomplished conquerors of the ancient world, and its administrators were among the most efficient. Furthermore, the empire was remarkably tolerant and inclusive, allowing its diverse population to practice their own religions and customs. If you want to learn more about the Achaemenid Empire, check out the playlist in the description below. We've got videos on every single king from Cyrus the Great to Darius III. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.